Hey guys, I'm Amin. I'm the co-founder at PhaseLink AI. We're an AI agency, and over the last couple of years, we've been building solutions for real companies, everything from voice agents, chatbots, automation. Yeah, and now I'm just starting YouTube to share my journey with you. And the goal is pretty simple. I want to teach you guys a couple of things I've learned, as well as learn from you guys, and hopefully build a community of people that are excited about AI automations. So for today's video, we're starting with the very foundation. If you want to learn n8n, if you want to learn make.com, if you want to sell these solutions to companies, the foundation is APIs, and that's the most crucial part, and usually the part where people actually give up. So it's not that hard. I know it could get complex. It's complicated to look at, but it's very easy to understand. And once that click happens, you're set. So APIs are the invisible bridges that make automation possible. And I'll show you guys how to use them inside n8n step by step. Okay, so let's dive right into it. So imagine we're at a restaurant here, and you have the menu. So I'm right here. This is the menu, and I see that it has food one as well as food two to offer. Of course, I'm going with food one, right? So I say, hey, I'm going with food one. I tell the waiter, food one, please. Waiter goes to the kitchen, says this guy wants food one. The kitchen prepares it, and now they're sending it back. So from the kitchen to the waiter and right back to my fat ass. Okay, sorry, guys. Okay, so similarly here, uh, it's the exact same thing for APIs. So we have our API documentation where we see what data is available to us. Here we have data one and data two. And the AI agent now says, okay, I want to grab data two. So we're going to make an HTTP request through the web. The HTTP request usually is a URL. I'll show it in detail further on. And then we go to the endpoint. So the endpoint is the person that is hosting both data one and data two. We say, hey, please, I want data two. So data two goes back right here through our HTTP request, and our AI agent receives it. So now our agent has the data it was looking for. So very simple, super straightforward. The only thing that would be like slightly, I guess, complicated is the formatting and how to make your requests, etc., inside n8n, and I'll go right into it. All right, so we are now on n8n, and this is the difference between a native call to a service versus a HTTP call to a service. So this is our open weather map. It's essentially a service that gives us the weather in any location, and this is the native version of it, and this is the HTTP version of it. So what a native version is, it's just an HTTP request that's wrapped in a nice user interface for us to use and understand. So if I go here on action in an app, you can see that n8n offers all these different apps, and there's just a ton of them. And all of these are just nice user interface wrappers of HTTP requests. So that way it's just straight to the point, way easier. For some of them, you don't even have to read the documentation that we talked about earlier. You just click on it and you're ready to go. Okay, so if we double click our native app here, you'll see that we're basically prompted to enter multiple things. So operation, whether we want current or 5-day forecast, the metric, the coordinate system, whether we want by city name or by coordinates, and we're prompted to enter the latitude, longitude, and the language. So if I execute this, you'll see that we have now received a bunch of data from the open weather map service. Now, if we go over to the HTTP request, it's essentially the very same thing, except there's way more manual labor. So first off, we have to define our method. Are we getting data from the service or are we posting data on the service? So in our case, we're retrieving the data. So it's a get method, and the URL would be in the docs that I talked about over here. So for example, If we go here on open weather, you can see this is their URL endpoint. So this is what we used in this field right here. The authentication, I did none, but the reality is the authentication is included here in the link because this is how it's structured in their documentation. If you see here, we have the link and they say, hey, app ID equals and then your API key. So documentation is very important when you're using APIs, and different services have different documentation. So it's not always going to be the exact same thing, but the concept remains the same. If we go a bit lower here, we have our query parameters. So these parameters are what we're asking from the service. As you can see here, I manually added these. I did add parameter here, and I did lat and typed in the whole thing. So you get it. So the same parameters that earlier we could just uh, put a value for. Now we have to actually come up with those parameters instead. So I hope you guys can see here the difference between a packaged HTTP request and a non-packaged HTTP request. And here, if we do execute step, you'll see that we receive the exact same data as we did from earlier. The wind speed, if there's clouds or not, sunrise, sunset, the temperature. And so yeah, so for the native integrations, as you can see, we were prompted for what parameters to put, and we put those in. However, for the manual HTTP, we manually had to go and say, hey, I want the latitude and longitude, and we had to add in those variables. So essentially, when we're making an HTTP request, we're just setting up filters and making selections. The methods, the two main ones are the get and post, depending on if we're retrieving data or if we're giving data. The endpoint is where that data is going to be sent or retrieved. In our case, for example, it was the open weather website. And then in our HTTP request, there are three main things: the header parameter, which usually contains the API key, and the API key is like a password. Okay, so I know I just shared mine with you guys, but um, it's a password. So, for example, if I were making requests to a service that says, "Hey, I'm gonna charge you every time you make a request," someone could just take your API key and make all those requests, and you're gonna get charged for them. So API keys are very important to keep secure and never share those with anyone. The query parameters are essentially our filters. So, for example, if I search Google for pasta, it's only going to give me results of pasta. And that's what we're doing with our request here. We just said latitude and longitude. Our body parameters is, for example, imagine we have a database with a bunch of people, um, and we want to retrieve data for people named Amin specifically. So I would send in my body parameter. I'd say name equals Amin, and then the response I get is it gives me the result for all the people called Amin in that database.
Okay, so where does this bring us? Um, Now we understand how APIs work, what they are. Here's a use case for them, and it's actually my very first use case. So when I was making a AI agent over the phone, it was supposed to book in customers, um, kind of like a service desk. However, what I noticed pretty quickly is that my idiot AI didn't actually know what time it is right now or what day it is right now. And I'll show you guys a demonstration of that right here with a chat agent, and we'll see how to fix it with an API call. So if I go right here on my chat model, I'll pick OpenAI. We'll go with the older model. It's just because I believe these could search the net, or can't search the net rather, sorry. So yeah, we have our model. We'll give it some memory so it remembers parts of the combo. Okay, and now if I open the chat here and I say, what day is it? Or let's say, what day and time is it in Ottawa? It'll say it is currently August 15, 2021. So that's like 4 years back. And the reason being is because these models don't have access to the internet and they were trained back then. And most of the time, when you're creating a solution, you're going to want to use these models that don't have access to the internet because they're cheaper. Um, but in this case, for example, we still want them to know what day and time it is. So, what are we going to do? We're going to use an API. Here is something called Time API. If I hit View Docs here, what this does is we make a request to it and it gives us the time zone and the date and all the good stuff that we need if it loads here. Okay, so we're here on the documentation for the Time API, and the one we're going to be using is the one that gives us the current time depending on the zone, the time zone we're in. So here, for example, you see that if they passed in Europe/Amsterdam as a INA time zone, and they retrieved this data back. So this is the date, this is the time, this is the day of the week, and we need our AI to know all of this. So what we're going to do is we're going to take their request URL. It's everything before the question mark here. Anything after the question mark is just those variables that we talked about, those query parameters, but included in the URL. And for the purpose of the video, I'm not going to go too in depth in that. And I'll show you guys how to do it the manual way. So for our tools, we're just going to add an HTTP request here, and we're going to paste in that URL right here. The method is get, since we are retrieving data, and we're going to add the query parameter. So earlier, like we saw here, it's time zone. That's what we're looking for. So our query parameter name is going to be time zone. Now for the value here, you're going to see let the model define this parameter. We're going to click on that and we're going to add the description. We're going to say full IANA time zone name. And then I'll give it a little example. Same one as we had earlier. Europe/Amsterdam. Okay, so yeah, there we go. We have our API request. And now if I close this and I go to the chat and I say, what time and day is it in Ottawa? So as you can see here, our agent actually goes to the HTTP request in order to retrieve that data. Okay, so we got here the current date and time in Ottawa, American/Toronto, and notice here we can see the value it passed for the time zone variable. It passed in America/Toronto because that's what the time zone is over here in Ottawa. And yeah, it got it correct. It said August 30th, 2025. So now, all right. So just like that, guys, we actually made our AI use an API call to retrieve external data and use it. The time thing was just a little example. The possibilities that you could do are limitless. You could book in appointments on Google Calendar. You could update your client's CRM, multiple things, limitless. And yeah, so this is probably the most chopped video you've ever watched on YouTube. But cut me some slack. It's the first video here. And if you guys have any questions, leave them down below in the comments. And I'll make sure to answer.